Round 6 at the Bay Area Open. We've got Jack over here. We've got Ivan. This is the top table. This is for the win. We've actually calculated that the people in the lower tables, no matter what happens, will not have enough points to make it up into first place. So the winner of this game is going to be it. Jack is back. Despite losing in round 4, he went down and on the top table, we had Yvonne and Brian fight it out in this completely senseless, internecine battle between two different High Elf factions, and Yvonne was victorious, so he is now back up here. Jack took out a bunch of orcs in round 5. He's back up, so here we go. These are going to be the top 2 armies. We're playing Breakpoint. Be back with deployments. All right, here's the High Elf army. We're catching up here on the filmings. We've got a Great Eagle on the flank, unit of 10 Silver Helms, Archmage on a horse, Prince on a big dragon back there, Star Dragon. I've got some Dragon Princes up on a hill, and some 2 units of Reavers, both with spears, despite how they're modeled, and a great Eagle over there. And where's your last hero? It's in the Dragon Princes. Yep, there's the BSB. Okay. Here's the Vampire counts again. We got some Dire Wolves, 2 units there. We got a Vampire level 2 Wizard on a Zombie Dragon. Black Knights there. Necromancer level 4 on Mortis Engine. Dire Wolves, 6 units of 6 Blood Knights, 5 more Dire Wolves, and a Vargulf. And I believe there's another BSB character in there somewhere. Catching up with the Vanguard moves. The Wolves, who are just a little bit out here on the flanks, took their Vanguard. Strategy phase for the Vampire counts. We've got 3 spells buffing up this dragon here. Dance Macabre, Glittering Robe, and Battle Lust all went off. Turn 1 charges. The Zombie Dragon charged straight into the Silver Helms. He was close enough, and Dance Macabre gave him a little extra move, so he was actually get the turn 1 charge off. Movement for the Vampire counts. Dire Wolves moved up. Black Knights moved up. Mortis Engine moved up. Dire Wolves are kind of angled there. Blood Knights, Dire Wolves down the line, and Vargulf coming up the far flank. Vampire shooting consisted only of the Ruby Ring of Ruin, which fired off against those Reavers over there. Killed 3 of them, and they passed their panic test. Combat here between the Vampire on the Dragon and Silver Helms. Silver Helm unit champion issued a challenge. The Dragon beat up on him, didn't quite max out the combat res, actually. Only got 4 overkill. Rolled some good saves here. And he was able to roll give ground. So they will just give ground. And the Vampire on the Dragon has elected to follow up, so they will run it again next turn. Strategy phase for the High Elves. The Wizard attempted to cast Fury of Cain on the Silver Helms, and got dispelled. Charges for the High Elves. This Great Eagle flew into the side of these Dire Wolves, and that Dragon was able to draw line of sight to the dragon here because he's a large target, and was able to fly over the Silver Helms and actually get a charge there. He's pointed backwards because we tried to get the models together and they just wouldn't fit. They're too epic. So we just did what we had to do to get the bases touching. Over on the side of the table here for a better view. So here's the movement, remaining moves phase for the Elves. The 2 remaining Reavers are moving up there in the woods. The Dragon Princes redressed their ranks and moved backwards, and the Reavers back there moved sideways because they're skirmishers. They can do that out from behind them. And the Archmage on the horse there moved sideways from out behind that combat. And that's about it. In the shooting phase, the High Elves put down a Tempest right there. All right, so here was this combat. Dragon came flying in, did 3 wounds to the Vampire on the Zombie Dragon, and caused 1 additional combat res from a regen save. The Zombie Dragon was able to do 2 wounds back to the High Elf Dragon there. It was a challenge, so the Silver Helms were not involved in the combat, but they did add quite a bit of combat res with their banner, war banner, close order, all that stuff. Ended up losing combat by a lot. So even with the Indomitable from the BSB, took 3 additional crumble wounds, and he is down to 1 wound. That dragon is taking a beating right now. Now the Eagle into the Wolves. No damage either way. The Eagle, however, has a flank, so they were able to win combat by 1. They have Indomitable 1 from the VSB, so pushed him back 2 inches. And the Eagle followed up. Vampire count strategy phase. They dispelled the Tempest. They healed up the dragon by 1. Then a bunch of spells. Glittering Robe went off on the dragon. World of Pain. Word of Pain went off on the Elf Dragon. And Dance Macabre went off on the Black Knights. And I believe Battle Lust tried to go off but was dispelled. Charges for the vampire counts. The Black Knights were able to just barely fit through that gap, and they are into this combat, just touching tips there with the Silver Helms. Couple more charges. Dire Wolves went in on the flank of the Great Eagle. The Vargulf charged into the Reavers back there. The Reavers ran away, so the Reavers are now back there. They moved 10 in their flea move, and that's how far the charge got. And one final charge here. These Direwolves charged in on the Eagle. Remaining moves phase. The Mortis Engine positioned a little bit. Direwolves positioned a little bit. The Black Knights, behind you, are really in a standoff. The Blood Knights are really in a standoff with these Dragon Princes. They're measuring inches and moving backwards and getting outside of the threat range, but hopefully inside their own threat range. They're just kind of angling to see who's going to get the charge there. See how it goes. One final note on the remaining moves phase. He attempted to cast Infernal Gateway on the dragon, I think to pull it out of combat, but it got dispelled. So the dragon is in combat. For the shooting phase for the vampires, really the only thing is the Ruby Ring of Ruin. It went off and killed 4 Reavers out of that unit. This combat over here with the Direwolves versus the Great Eagle. The Direwolves actually wounded the Great Eagle. The Great Eagle rolled terrible on the leadership and fled combat, and then rolled very terrible on its flee roll. And the Wolves caught it, and it is dead. In this Direwolf on Eagle combat, Direwolves were actually able to win. They had the flank, that certainly helped. And Eagle passed leadership check and gave ground, and the Direwolves both followed up. So they just pushed them back a couple inches. This is a very complex combat, so we're going to break it up. So first off, the 2 dragons in their challenge. The Elf Dragon rolled super cold and did no damage to the Vampire and the Zombie Dragon. Vampire and the Zombie Dragon got off a Spectral Doppelganger for a huge 9 attacks. Rolled pretty hot, managed to do 5 wounds to the Elf Dragon. So it is now down to 2. They're both at 2 wounds each. The World of Pain also helped quite a bit, reducing the strength and reducing the toughness. Made it a little easier to wound there. And then the Cavalry fighting each other. The Black Knights were actually able to go first because they got up to initiative 6 on the charge. And with the Dance Macabre, they were able to get an additional 2 weapon skill. They rolled pretty hot, killed 5 Silver Helms. And the Silver Helms, did they kill any Black Knights? No. 0. So, man, this has been a very, very cold turn for the Elven dice. They lost combat by quite a bit, but they are not quite doubled out on unit strength yet. It's 17 unit strength for the Elves versus 30 for the vampire counts. So they're not 2-to-1 yet. They both rolled a fallback in good order. So they were doing a fallback in good order right now. All right, here we have the final phase of this extremely complicated combat. So we had 2 fallback in good orders. The dragon fell back in good order through the knights, so it actually took another wound running through the knights. And the Silver Helms went there. The zombie dragon with the vampire pursued the Silver Helms, right there. And the Black Knights pursued the dragon. So we effectively swapped combatants in here from how it started, because we started off... Actually, originally the dragon was on the Silver Helms, then it went onto the Elf Dragon, now it's back again. Crazy combat. Anyway, we're now split into 2 combats, and both of those Elven characters passed their panic checks. Start of turn for the High Elves. They were successfully able to cast Fury of Cain on the Dragon Princes, and those Reavers back there have rallied. High Elf charges. The main one is that these Dragon Princes have now piled into this combat. So Dragon Princes are going into the flank of the Black Knights. Remaining moves for the High Elves. So the Reavers have moved out there to get in the way of the Blood Knights and I think redirect and to protect the Dragon Princes and the Star Dragon there. The Archmage is now behind the Dragon Princes there, and the Noble was hiding behind here, behind the Silver Helms, which I will update you on in a second. Looks like they took some casualties. First up, we've got the Vampire on a Zombie Dragon, and he is fighting the Silver Helms. Well, they're all dead. All the Silver Helms are dead. He chose to restrain instead of charging into the Noble there, so he's slightly repositioned himself, and he took no damage in the process, still at 2 wounds. All right, now this combat. So the Dragon Princes being able to go first did absolutely catastrophic damage to the Black Knights, and they weren't really able to get a whole lot of attacks back. Lots and lots of regen saves made, but that still counted for combat res, which ended up winning the combat by like 10 or so, which made a huge crumble, even with the Indomitable 2 from the BSB. So that whole unit is going to be wiped out. All right, to follow it up, the Prince of the Dragon decided to overrun and then did a reform at the end of the overrun, because you can choose to do that. And the Dragon Princes successfully restrained and just kind of adjusted their line a little bit. Over to this combat between the Great Eagle and the Direwolves. Direwolves won, finished off the Eagle. That's a dead Eagle. I'll tell you the resolution in a second. Both units of Wolves successfully restrained and reformed. Strategy phase for the Vampire Counts. He attempted to regenerate some wounds on the Vampire of the Zombie Dragon and failed, so he's still at 2 wounds. He did cast Glittering Robe on himself, and he did cast Miasmic Mirage on those Dragon Princes, so they can't march or charge next turn. However, he failed to cast World of Pain, so that's not in effect this turn. Here's the charges. The Black Knights charged in on the Reavers, and you can see how that redirect worked there. It forced them to angle, so if they overrun, they're not going to hit, anything pretty much. They'll run off to the side. So clever redirect there, and they formed up because they got charged as skirmishers. All right, this is the movement phase, or remaining moves. So the Zombie Dragon jumped over that dragon and tried to stay out of the front arc. Mortis Engine moved up behind here. And that is about it. Shooting phase for the Vampire Counts. The Mortis Engine finished off the Star Dragon with a Wailing Dirge, so it is gone. The Zombie Dragon breathed fire on the Dragon Princes and got some hits, but didn't actually damage anything. Reserve moves, just a small one here. Direwolves moved over and moved around a little bit. High Elf turn. This is a very quick turn, so we're going to be able to summarize it in one go here. So, no magic at the start of the turn. During the remaining moves phase, no charges, especially because they still have Miasmic Mirage on them. He rotated his Dragon Princes so that they're out of charge range of the Dragon, completely out of the front arc there. His Wizard, way over there, got right in front of the Vargulf, but did not charge him, just got in its way. And I think that's just about it. Oh, he cast Walk Between Worlds on himself, so the Wizard is ethereal. All right, start a turn for the High Elves. We had a couple spells go off. Glittering Robe on the Dragon. World of Pain on the Dragon Princes. And Dance Macabre and Battle Lust went off on the Blood Knights. Charge moves. So you can see he just moved his Blood Knights into the Dragon Princes. So the Dragon Princes countercharged and wheeled at the start of the countercharge, and the Blood Knights redressed their ranks through the drilled rule, so everyone's line abreast for maximum attacks. Also, back in the thing, the Vargulf charged 1 inch into the Wizard. Remaining moves for the Vampires. The Dragon moved up here, and then took a pivot for lumbering. Mortis Engine moved up a bit, took a 90-degree pivot from lumbering. Dogs are moving up there. Dogs are moving over there, behind the Vargulf. You can make your attacks against the Vargulf. Combat over here. The Mage managed to do 2 damage to the Vargulf with Corporeal Unmaking and 1 damage to the regular attack. Vargulf couldn't do anything because the Mage is ethereal. And then the Vargulf crumbled to death. So that's a dead Vargulf right there. Go ahead and take him off, yep. And overruns right into the Direwolves. All right, so we got this cavalry on cavalry combat here. We had a challenge between the BSB and a regular Blood Knight. That was just a pillow fight. Nobody did any damage. And then the rest of the lines of knights killed I think 3 Blood Knights dead, 4 Dragon Princes dead. Dragon Princes won combat by 1 due to a failed regen save, and Blood Knights gave ground. However, that's break point. So that is going to be the end of the game. We'll try to get some debrief here. All right, so you got a little debrief here, Ivan. Tell me your thoughts on the game.
It was a very swinging game. The fact that it was breakpoint specifically was a very big deal, given that the game ended right here in this situation, where we've got the unit of Dragon Princes freeing from the Blood Knights. But I was already broken because there was only so few models on the table. There were some very risky plays that actually played out, which was very great of my opponent to do. I guess you don't get this high in the tournament without taking risky plays. So this worked. This worked very well. It was a real bloodbath. All right. Uh, I don't know. So
Anything
far as a run, what
Anything you would have done differently?
I okay. I don't think I could. In retrospect, I think that I made my bets the way I would want to make them. I've put a unit of Silverhelms here to soak up the initial charge of the dragon. I intended to challenge him with a champion, fall back in good order, and have the dragon from here flank charge him. That worked. So I wouldn't do it differently, really. It's just that the dice didn't quite work out, and he managed to stay alive on 2 wounds for the rest of the game.
Even 1 wound at one point. He was
One,
down to 1 and then regen down
yes,
to 2.
yes, that's right. Basically, I was 1 rank bonus away from actually killing him on the first turn of mine. It didn't work out, that's fine, it happens. It doesn't mean that the strategy was necessarily bad. Here, unfortunately, the rolls for magic, the new edition just favors a more dicey approach to magic, I guess, in the sense that you roll off with your opponent to get the effects off. And if you don't win the roll offs, you suffer the consequences of some of the spell effects. And some of the spell effects are very powerful, such as, for example, Miasmic Mirage, that prevented this unit from moving forward and actually trying to clear the table on their own turn. So that was big. There was a funny little duel where a mage basically intercepted Sola, that Wargulf over there, turned himself invisible, and corporeally unmade that bastard so that he crumbled to dust in 1 turn. That was sweet.
Were you thinking of having the mage join the Silver Helms and cast Ethereal on them? Was that part of your strategy?
Okay, that was a part of my strategy for pretty much the entire tournament. For 5 games, I've had this ethereal unit of 10 Silver Helms with the mage roll up the table and murder everything. But this game, this was not the right call because the thing they were going up against was this guy. His main damaging ability was called the Spectral Doppelganger. This is an assailant. Yes, this is an assailant spell that's doing magical attacks just by its nature. And if he charges that unit, that means the mage cannot dispel anything. So basically, I give up him free reign on all of the illusion debuffs, on Ward of Pains, on everything, only to get an ethereal that's only going to save me from some attacks from the guy himself and the dragon. This was, objectively speaking, not a very smart move here. The mage hanged back, managed to try and at least attempt to dispel. The dice didn't go my way, but that was, I guess, the right way to do that. And then in the end, I scored the Vargeist with this mage. Otherwise, it would be just dead to this monster here. So yeah, that was alright. 1 note: mage cannot join Dragon Princes because the mage did not buy the Blood of Caldor honor. Dragon Princes can only be joined by your general or models with that honor. So there is that. That's it. Yeah, it was very tight.
Really close game.
Very tight on the dice.
And
Yes,
thank you for
yes.
letting me film.
Oh, sure, of course, of
All right,
course.
thanks a lot.
Right, bye.
All right, we've got Jack, our tournament champion from the BAO here. for his debrief. Let's just talk about that last game. How'd it go? And just let me know what your thoughts were.
Well,
Pretty
so
close.
yeah, so one of the most important things about this game is I got to play against my good friend Ivan. And Ivan has beaten me in like 4 of our last 4 games. And so facing him in the finals was amazing. So one of the things that really started this game off on the right foot for me was I got exactly the 4 spells I wanted. And it was the first time in the tournament I got exactly the 4 spells I wanted. And it's a really unique thing. Word of Pain is one that I didn't get the entire tournament. I finally got it. It paid off really well. So the centerpiece of the army is the dragon, Zacharias the Wild, and so an old vampire model, Zacharias, on the new dragon. And so the key to this whole model is spectral doppelganger and a great weapon. So I figured, as I'm making my list for this army, every dragon that I'm gonna need to beat is already gonna be hitting me first. So I took the great weapon. He already has magical attacks as a mage, and I just pump out attacks as much as I possibly could. Um, and so yeah,
Normally, Spectral Doppelganger is really hard to cast, right? Because it's like a
yes,
high difficulty spell, and the Vampire Lord can only get two. But you have Master the Black Arts and the Mortis Engine, right? So
yes.
that gets you up to four.
Up to 4, yeah, and so that is a key thing. Also, zoning is really important with the dragon. Getting the dragon where it needs to be as quickly as possible, and being as resilient as possible with glittering scales and toughness 6 means that you can really take a lot of charges, which was a really fun thing that I got to experience. And he got charged by a bunch of stuff, survived a bunch of stuff. But one of the units that really was an odd unit throughout the whole thing was the Blood Knights. And my Blood Knights, the first day, probably killed a total of maybe 150 points worth of models throughout 3 games. And so finally, as fate would have it, they come in and they win the final game, killing enough Dragon Princes to set up me knocking my opponent below the threshold. And this scenario was the scenario that I was the most afraid of because I have the lowest model count. Um, and luckily enough, my opponent has the second lowest model count. But yeah, so this game was really about setting up the dragon to do the most amount of damage, the dogs to survive, and creating a stalemate long enough with the Blood Knights and the Dragon Princes to where there's going to be one defining combat, and it worked out. It worked out in my favor. The dragon survived on 1 wound. It was absolutely wild, and it was so much fun. I it was really great.
Anything you would have done different? Just thinking the game over. I know you won, but like anything to improve?
Um, I probably would have set the Vargolf up to be in a better supporting position. I put him on a flank. It did end up being pretty good as he zoned a bunch of stuff out, but he could have done better. He didn't really do anything. The dogs killed both eagles, which was huge, which is really huge. The dogs are a really interesting unit. Movement is just wild. They get a vanguard, swift stride. They are absolutely insane as a movement model. And the Mortis engine giving +1 move and +1 initiative to everything is,
Casting.
yeah, casting is so great. Well, and my opponents also got a lot of spells off with the +1 because it gives them to the opponent as well. And so yeah, it was really fun. Uh, at the end of the day, I think I need to find a different way to play the Black Knights. The Black Knights really underperformed the whole weekend, and were just ended up being the beat stick, and they just got beat up and annihilated every single time. I don't know what I'm gonna do to make them better, but we're gonna find a way, and we're gonna keep going.
Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks
Yeah.
for letting me film. Much appreciated.
Uh,
Congrats on the
Thank you so much. Yes.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.